It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. Can you believe that we are officially on a Wednesday? We are halfway through the week. The light is shining brightly at the end of the tunnel. You've almost made it, my friends. Hang tight, because we get to have a little more fun today, as we do every single day. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. It's an honor to have you along this morning, kicking off a brand new Wednesday morning. And I want to hear from you. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, we're all over social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Facebook Live right now, along with all the radio stations across the entire state of Kansas and beyond, with KQAM, with KIUL, with KYUL, with KGYN, and of course our brand new TV affiliate, KGPT TV, channel 2610, right here in the Wichita area. Not to mention, there's potential of another TV station affiliate picking us up here relatively soon, and hopefully they do. If so, then we would love to have them as well. But welcome aboard. Lots to get to today. I don't know if we have enough time to get through everything that we want to talk about, which is a good thing, I guess, to some degree, because there's a lot of things happening. Some good, some not so good, which is why today on Wednesdays, we always like to call today the hashtag Wackadoodle Wednesday, which is very appropriate for most times. First off, let's start off with the biggest news of all. I think it's breaking. We should probably announce this in the appropriate manner, as the fact is, starting off on the national level, President Donald Trump, as of last Friday, has had a physical and a doctor overview. Because, as you know, according to the progressives and the Democrats, he is mentally unfit. He's wandering around aimlessly in the White House. He doesn't know how to actually negotiate or deal with anything. He's waiting for all his advisors to take care of him and be able to walk him through some of these issues, because he just can't do it himself. He is incapable. He's too old. He's got the onset of amnesia. He doesn't know what's going on. So what does President Trump do? He gets the doctor in order to give him a physical, not to mention a cognitive screening, to make sure that he's all okay up in the brain. And according to the reports, President Donald Trump's overall health is excellent, according to the doctor. And he did exceedingly well on his cognitive screening. There you go. He's just fine. Will the Democrats believe it? Probably not. They're going to call that hashtag fake news because they don't know what hashtag fake news actually means. So they're going to go after Donald Trump in that manner, because now he has manipulated and he's played politics, and he's probably bought off the doctor in some way, shape, or form. The same doctor, mind you, that President Barack Obama had used in the past, but that doesn't matter. So now we've taken away their arson. That he's unfit. We need to move with the 25th Amendment for the impeachment process, because he doesn't know how to actually act. He doesn't know what he's doing. His tweets cause him to show that he is just completely just not giving a crap, or that he's mentally unstable. All these psychiatrists all over the country have been able to diagnose him just by watching his speeches and watching his Twitter behavior, and therefore they know more than that screening that happened at the White House. So President Donald Trump, still probably unfit in the minds of the Democrats and the progressives to not hold public office. I can see it now. They don't care. They don't care. But now we get to say it ourselves.
We don't care anymore.
I can't quite hear you. What?
We don't care anymore.
Oh, please, one more time.
We don't care anymore.
I didn't quite get that. One last time.
We don't care anymore.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. We really just don't care about what you have to say, progressives, anymore, because if that's going to be your argument for the fact that President Trump needs to leave and we need to impeach him, then well done. So I thank President Barack Obama for choosing the doctor, President Donald Trump for actually getting the health screening and rubbing it in their face. Fine, you want that? Not only are we going to do a physical to make sure that I'm healthy, but we're going to do a cognitive screening as well to make sure that I'm mentally all up there and okay, and everything come back as excellent and doing exceedingly well on his mental behavior. Yeah, 6'3", 239 pounds, was blood pressure 122/74, and total cholesterol at 223, which is higher than recommended, but still within the parameters of being healthy. What else you got for us, Democrats? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. The phones are lighting up, apparently. Maybe we upset a few individuals who were hoping that he was mentally unstable from the doctor's report. Let's go right to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name? Hello. Hello. All right, let me put you on hold a second. We'll come back to you in just a second. While we do that, let's go to another phone call. Good morning. What's your name? Hello.
Is this Wackadoodle?
This is the Wackadoodle. What's going on, my friend?
Hey, happy Wackadoodle.
Absolutely. What's on your mind?
Well, since Trump has passed physical and mental exam, I'd like to have 535 Congress and senators. See how many of those old guys can pass the same test.
Ooh, that's a good point. Well, that's a good point. We read the story, what was it, about a month or so ago, about the number of, because they have the pharmacy that's inside the State House, the Capitol building, where all the congressmen and women are, and they had actually done an interview with one of the pharmacists at the pharmacy in the Capitol, and they made the comment of, you wouldn't realize, you would be shocked about how many individuals actually that are elected officials have heavy-duty, extremely hard Alzheimer's pills because they're old and they're beginning to slip a little bit. And we prescribe Alzheimer's pills in the Capitol. That's a really good point because while Donald Trump is doing exceedingly well with his cognitive screening and his health, some of the other members of Congress don't know what they ate for lunch the day before, and the pharmacy actually acknowledged that point. So that's a really good, interesting question.
Yeah, the other thing that I'm looking forward to, since everyone's appalled that Trump referred to some nations as less than spectacular.
Yes.
They're working on the budget. Why don't we just cut the foreign aid to Haiti and to the African nations and to any place that's really upset about being called what he called them?
Well, that's true. If they want to throw a fit about it, then you're right. Then they don't deserve our money. And if they think that they're so great and wonderful and they can compete with a first world country like the United States while they're not a first world country, then you're right. Then they can do that without our funding. The same goes for, by the way, and Myron, I appreciate the call. I want to take another one here. And you bring up some really good points, is you're right. If they don't like it, then they can just go about their own way and not be funded by the federal government, by the United States. Same goes with the individuals in the United Nations, which I love the fact that they're starting to threaten this at the United Nations level, that if you don't support some of the agenda and resolutions from the United States supporting Israel and supporting Jerusalem, then all these countries that vote against us, you don't need our funding either. If you're going to be our allies, but yet vote against us on everything that we want to do, then we don't need you as well, and you can just go without our money. How much money do you think we could possibly save by cutting some of the federal aid going to some of these other nations that fight us tooth and nail on everything that we do? Some really great points, Myron. I appreciate that. Let's go back to the phones this morning, shall we? Good morning. What's your name? Hello. Going once. Going twice. All right, give me a call back. I want to hear from you. 721-8255, 721-TALK. Let's take another one, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Jim, what's going on, sir?
Well, I wanted to comment upon the president's physical and mental evaluation.
Yes. Do you think the Democrats will actually listen to it?
Well, I want the other people out there in the radio land to hear this. First off, I want to go back and talk about Congress for a second. I remember watching C-SPAN and the Democrat senator from California, Alan Cranston,
sure,
who literally had to be carried in to be sat down in a seat, and his aide behind him would lean forward, and I think it was kind of like a puppet. I think they had their hand up his back to make a move because he was incapable of anything unless he was told what to say in the first place.
Sure.
As far as the president and the nuclear key, people need to understand the chain of command. The president of the United States can authorize the military to make a launch when the military have contacted him and said, we need to launch, we are under attack. If the president just picks up his phone and says, General, launch an attack, they will laugh at him.
Oh, sure. They got to go through the process.
The president has a veto key, but he doesn't have a key to launch on his own.
And here's the thing, Jim. The Democrats and the progressives know this, but it's the political game they love to play because most of the American people don't know that. They honestly, and the way that the progressives love to portray this because they're the ultimate manipulators, as they go to the general public and try to set this stage and try and create this scenario in people's minds that Donald Trump is literally sitting in the Oval Office with nobody else around, thinking about how manipulative he can be and how he doesn't like someone bullying him and trying to challenge him, and how he's literally got the briefcase open, the football open, and he's punching in the codes, and he's contemplating on whether he's going to push that big button to fire off a nuclear missile right now because he really doesn't like that Kim Jong-un. That's the picture that they try and crack for the progressives.
And that's why I said it this morning.
Exactly. Because
I want people to realize they need to understand just what the process
actually is
limited.
To actually make happen. I agree. Jim, I appreciate it. I got to take a break, my friend, but you're right, because that's the mindset they create, and people panic thinking that just Donald Trump's going to blow everybody off the face of the earth if he doesn't like them.
To the Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Good Wednesday morning to you. It's an honor to have you along today as we roll along on a Wednesday on a hashtag Wackadoodle Wednesday. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I love the phone calls right off the bat this morning. Fantastic. As we make sure that President Donald Trump is mentally fit to be aimlessly wandering around the White House and watching TV and eating Cheetos, but yet still being in better health than most presidents before him. Have you noticed, by the way, he's actually gained weight? When I read the report, what'd they say he was? He was a whole 239 pounds, 3 pounds heavier than what he was in September of 2016. And if you know, most presidents actually lose weight when they're in the White House. It's a very stressful job. By any a Republican, Democrat, anybody, it's a very stressful job with the threats that they have, with some of the things that they have to go through, with the long hours, with the long days, with traveling around and speaking all the time. Always having to be on your toes, meeting with different people, getting that 3 a.m. call. That was, remember that in the primaries? The joke about who can answer and who can wake up and be alert and be able to make decisive decisions at 3 a.m. when they get that phone call. Yeah, you remember all that? You know, I thought it was kind of comical, but he's doing all of that, and he's actually gaining weight as opposed to losing weight. If you watch and look at the before and after pictures of any president, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, they are nice and healthy, and they have their hair color, and they're nice and fit, and they're ready to go at the beginning of it, and they're all excited. And then by the end of their 8 years, 4 years, or whatever they've done, they're nothing but gray, and they're really thin, and they're really tired, and they're really old-looking and feeble, just because of the fact that, well, you know, the 8 years have worn and torn on them. We'll see if President Trump does the same thing. But a year into it, he's actually very healthy. Probably because of the fact that he is smart, and he's actually had stressful hours being a business owner, and he knows how to do these things in a collective manner as opposed to the freak-out session that many actually like to do. I don't want to spend too terribly much time on the federal side and with President Trump because everybody talks about that, and I don't really care right now because we have opportunities to fix things at our local levels. But I do want to, I found this story, and this was an opinion piece out of the Dallas News, And I know we have a lot of listeners down in Texas that actually reached down into Amarillo and that area. And if you're listening to this, one of your opinion guys out of Dallas wrote this. It's a very interesting piece, but a grade card on the first year of President Donald Trump. And I'd have to strongly disagree with much of this. I'd probably have to disagree with a lot of it, even though some of it's kind of sort of on point. But he makes some interesting points. First off, he does it kind of category by category and gives them a little bit lower grades than what I'd probably anticipate myself. Taxes. He gave them a B-. The tax cut bill they promised was good, but they promised tax reform, which they did not provide to us. Tax cuts will result in a budget deficit rather than the revenue neutral package for the GOP plan. That's just not true, even though it's nice to talk about that we're going to actually have a deficit. Again, first off, I don't care about the deficit if it does create one because we're already in $22 trillion of a deficit or a debt. I really don't care if it adds to that. We mentioned yesterday the fact that we have record number tax revenues in the country for income tax revenue, and yet we still were $225 billion in a deficit for the year because we still cannot pay off our debts. We still cannot make more money than we are spending because that's just the spending habits of the federal government. So did he do a tax reform? Not necessarily yet. Baby steps. I don't know what we're expecting everything to be done just like that. It ain't going to happen if that's what we're anticipating. So let's take it one step at a time. Foreign policy and national defense. He gives them a grade C. Because of the United Nations, the ambassador Nikki Haley with a fierce advocation for the U.S., which is good, but while also pushing back on President Trump when necessary, not so good. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson must be the most frustrating cabinet member in the executive branch because Tillerson seems to be doing his best, but Trump also consistently undercuts him, making the job much more difficult. Defense Secretary James Mattis, a strong positive for his part. Mattis put the death grip on ISIS and works diligently to restore military funding lost during budgetary sequestration, if I can talk today, and a few years ago. President Trump's immature tweets about North Korea and his poorly implemented travel ban also loses him points. I don't know if that loses him points. Tweeting Kim Jong-un, like we mentioned before, if the leader of a dictatorial country like North Korea, a tyrant in North Korea, is going to be out there tweeting about Donald Trump or making stupid comments, then Donald Trump has the right to respond to that. And Twitter being his favorite platform, he's going to do that, which I think is very appropriate. He's directly relating to the American people that voted him into office, so they hear from him directly as opposed to the media spin on this. They know what he's thinking. They know what he's doing. He's calling out other world leaders. He's calling out other elected officials. He's calling out X, Y, and Z. Yeah, some people may not like it, and sometimes you just think, whatever. But why do we focus on that so much? Who cares? Who cares anymore? I don't need to play the song again, do I? When it comes to health care, grade D-, according to this individual. Trump avoids F because of the tax bill that repealed the individual mandate, but yet he has not failed to reform the Affordable Care Act. The question I have to you is, what should we do the reform with? How should we reform it? Or should we repeal it without that reform? Which I think we should be doing. And we have to remember, in all of these discussions, he's not the only one. He's not the only one. He's not a dictator. He's not a tyrant. He's not a king. He cannot make all of these decisions on his own without Congress either supporting or denying him. And in many of these cases, they've denied him every step of the way, including Republicans. So all of these things, yeah, he hasn't been able to do them the way he promised, but how much authority should he have to override Congress? Or should we give them some of the responsibility as well?
Giving the libs one dose of sanity at a time.
I'm not being aggressive, I'm being dominant.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, good morning to you. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network along with KGPT TV 2610 if you're watching on your local cable here in the Wichita area. Don't worry, Western Kansas. We're moving your way on TV as well, so that way you have the opportunities for TV and for radio. I know that you only pick up the radio show for the first hour, and we do love that and appreciate that very much, but lots more is coming to you. We are the fastest growing radio/TV program in the entire state and region, really, right now, and we are honored and appreciate that so much. Your thoughts on President Trump's grade for the first year? I want to hear from you. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. You're more than welcome to give a grade on any of the different topics or categories that he is graded upon. So far, he's been given, according to this individual, again, this guy by the name of Jay Caruso, editorial writer for the Dallas News out of Dallas, Texas, gives President Donald Trump on the category of taxes a B-, on foreign policy a C, and on healthcare a D-. Not necessarily the best grades. They're not the worst by any factor, but I would give them different grades. On taxes, I would give him a B+. We did something major. It wasn't tax reform. It was a tax cut, but it's coming. It was the first bit of negotiation, the best piece of negotiation that I have seen in a very long time. The best bit of haggling back and forth. It wasn't the president. It's not the duty of the presidency in order to set the tax rates and do that. He can urge it. He can request it. He can advocate for it. He can fight for it all he wants to, but he's essentially irrelevant. I don't get it. The pro-Trumpers, 100%, all Trump's all the greatest thing in the entire world. The never-Trumpers, Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, Trump's the worst thing in the world. I despise him. I hate him no matter what. He's terrible because he's not doing anything, and look at his policies and look at what he's been able to get done. The president, if we want to break down and remember the basic separation of powers and the checks and balance system we have, the president is irrelevant in this conversation until it gets to his desk. End of story. And we have to remember that process, because if we don't, then he's going to get blamed like we do in every administration, every presidency. We're going to blame the president or lack thereof when it's Congress that's not acting. For the first tax cut in modern American history, really, major tax cut, except for when Reagan did it, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we haven't done anything. And for the first time, not only was it a tax cut, but it was the negotiation of two different chambers, crafting their bills, debating it on the floors, figuring out what's going to be included or not be included, or what's going to be changed or manipulated in the bills. Then they come to a convention with the committee, with the two different chambers coming together, morphing the two bills together, haggling it out, voting on the two again, sending it to the president's desk. When was the last time this has happened? The young generation, and many individuals for that matter, but especially the young generation, has never seen that process before, which is why in the news you heard a lot of these young reporters and these journalists, quote unquote. It's funny when I say that because it sounds like you're speaking lingo.
And no side-winding, bushwhacking, hornswoggling, crocker. Yeah,
pretty much. That's what they hear when they hear real negotiation, because they don't get it. They're used to the fast and furious. Get it done. Get it done. President's got to sign an executive order. Congress has got to ram it through, and it's got to be done in a week, and it's got to be signed by the president. It's got to be done. It's got to be done. That's what they're used to, and that's a very dangerous process to be in, isn't it? It's very dangerous to try and ram through legislation like that. We're supposed to have government gridlock. We are supposed to have two parties or maybe three parties, and we'll talk about a third party later on in the show today, but we're supposed to have that division of parties stopping each other, slowing the process, negotiating, haggling, fighting, getting heated up. I want to see that. I want to see them get infuriated with one another while they're crafting legislation, because that shows they're passionate. That shows that they actually give a crap. It shows that they actually want to get something done productively instead of just saying, whatever. As long as we get our special interest paid for, as long as we pander to the people who got us into office, as long as we get to take care of our district, I'm fine. How many times have we seen a piece of legislation, a stimulus package, a bailout bill, a porculus bill, whatever you want to call it, no more reconciliation, no more of the step-by-step when it comes to the budget? When was the last time that we haven't seen a massive bill, and the only way it passed was if you included something for their district or for their special interest? When it came to the tax cut, we almost saw that, because it was very difficult for Lisa Murkowski or for Susan Collins to jump on board with the tax bill, because they didn't want to see health care reform in it as well. The reason that they didn't support, being Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins and even John McCain, the reason they didn't want to see a healthcare repeal of Obamacare was because their states have expanded Medicaid. They expanded Medicaid, and if they repealed Obamacare at the federal level and they supported that, their states would lose money. So therefore, they're not looking out for the best interest of the American people or even their constituency. They're concerned about the federal money being flowing into their state. And that's why they supported to defend Obamacare as opposed to repealing Obamacare. That's why it's all about the special interests. It's all about the money. And politics has become that. This tax bill was the first time that we saw something extremely productive. So I give them a B+. They gave them a B-. I give them a B+, because no, it's not everything that we've wanted to, but it's the best that Trump could do. It was a great start. We did a major tax cut, and now we can look at spending reform and tax reform. Major tax reform. Getting rid of loopholes, simplifying the tax code to where it's easy across the board for individuals and for corporations. That's what we have to do. Foreign policy, they gave him a grade C. I give him a B. We've contained ISIS. We've shut down North Korea. At least we call out their bluffs when they try and talk smack to us. It's like a WWE wrestling match. North Korea, we're going to control it, and we're going to shoot down our missiles, and we're going to destroy you if you don't like us. And you better give us the free goodies that we've gotten for the last 50, 60, 100 years. And if you don't, then we'll start some shenanigans. Try it. Our button's bigger than yours. Go ahead and try it. We're like The Rock walking out of the backstage as the bad guy sitting in the ring talking smack, and The Rock walks out, and he looks at you with his eyebrow raised, and he says, yeah, go ahead and try it. Can you smell what The Rock's cooking? That's what we're doing right now. And unfortunately, it is that type of entertainment value. And unfortunately, it's not the most professional, but at the same time, that's what they respond to. And look they haven't tried anything. They've threatened it. And now they're trying to negotiate with South Korea. Now they want to be involved in international affairs. Now they're going to have a presence in the Olympics that are going to be in South Korea this year. They're doing different things because we're calling out their bluff, and they're realizing they don't have the power or the authority that they thought they did because they have been the bad guy talking smack in the middle of the ring, and no one has challenged them yet. And just wait until we show up. So I give them a B. They give them a C. I give them a B. Healthcare, they give him a D-. I give him a B-. It's not Trump's fault. He wanted to repeal Obamacare. He tried so hard to repeal Obamacare, and it came within one vote. One vote in the Senate. And it came to a personal vendetta with John McCain wanting to sabotage the entire thing. It came to Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins voting against healthcare reform because they didn't want to see the flow of money going into their state be cut off for their Medicaid expansion. We're seeing a revolt within the Republican Party. Notice the Republican Party right now, by the way. The Republican Party, and this is true here in the state as well, and many different states. We're seeing the Republican Party revolt against Republican values. The largest obstacle that Donald Trump has right now for the budget discussion that we're doing are the Republicans wanting to preserve DACA, wanting to preserve illegal aliens for staying in the country. That's the obstacle. If we could have a Republican unison, we would be able to override the Democrats, ram it down their throats the way we need to, and then we would actually be able to promote a Republican value. Enforcing immigration, building the wall, making sure DACA and Dreamers, quote unquote, either start from the back of the line again to be able to get their naturalization, or they leave the country. And I want to give them that option. You've been in the country. Some of you have worked. Some of you have contributed. Many of you have. Congratulations. We thank you for that. You're still here illegally, and you have not rectified that situation. If you start the process, we'll keep you here. If you start the naturalization process, we'll work with you. If not, then you need to go. End of story. But Republicans are the ones blocking it. The same Republicans that tried to fight tooth and nail to repeal Obamacare under the administration of Barack Obama tried over and over and over and over, including a very specific, very small, very detailed bill that just said, we're going to go back to healthcare as it was prior to 2012 when Barack Obama signed in the Affordable Health Care Act. We're going to repeal the individual mandate. We're going to repeal Obamacare. We're going to go back to a private sector, and then we're going to go from there. Very simple. And we can't pass it when we have the Republican majority with a Republican president willing to sign it. Why? because we have Republicans obstructing our very own agenda. It's a very frustrating situation, isn't it? So when we give him a D- for getting something done, is it really his fault? Let's remember again those separation of powers. Trade. This individual from the Dallas News gives him a grade F for trade. Understanding the damage of his threats of tariffs would especially be on working class Americans. His short-sighted withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership will only strengthen China's hand in making trade deals with other countries. His threat to pull out of NAFTA would be disastrous for border states, notably Texas. It's proof that business experience doesn't mean someone understands how to govern effectively. Gives him a F. I wouldn't do that. I would give him a C. I am a fan of repealing the TPP. I am a fan of repealing NAFTA. Why do we need trade deals like this? I don't understand that. We're a sovereign state, and we can negotiate trade deals on our own without having it to be regional or hemisphere-wise or whatever. We can set a trade deal with an individual country and do our own thing. We don't have to work with other nations. We don't have to. We have this mindset that unless it's a socialized group of communities of different nations working together and being all happy, hunky-dory, and holding hands in this nice little commune of trying to say that everybody gets a piece of this, then all of a sudden we're not going to get good trade deals. That's not the case. We can negotiate our own trade deals. It's okay. I am a fan of that, of repealing TPP. I am a fan of repealing NAFTA. I am not a fan, by the way, of placing in the tariffs. That was the one thing I strongly disagreed with President Trump on the campaign trail during the primaries when he said that he was going to place punishments and tariffs of corporations sending their manufacturing overseas or across the country to country borders. I'm more in favor of giving incentives of them staying here by taxes as opposed to actually putting punishments on them. I'm not a fan of the process of the tariffs, but that's the one thing I disagree with, and that's okay, in the punishment of the businesses. So I wouldn't say quite an F. I would say a C, however. C. I think we got better grades than we're at least passing right now. B's and C's. I think that's a passing grade. And that's pretty darn good for a president that really has obstacles thrown at him every single day. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 1 already. This show goes by way too fast. By the way, if you're watching the Facebook Live or if you are tuned in onto KGPT TV, channel 2610 here in the Wichita area, I got to give credit. All the imaging that you're seeing during the commercial breaks, all the banners and the stuff, really cool. Those guys made that up there at KGPT TV, Great Plains Television. Appreciate that very much. Making the show better every single day. We're always finding ways to shiny it up and polish it a little bit. Because, hey, you know what? That's what we do here. As we're advancing, growing, doing our part, we really appreciate those guys and what they're doing with the show as well. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. To wrap up this one, I do want to hear from you on your grade overall or by itemized grading on President Donald Trump for the first year. I wasn't going to go for the entire hour on this, but it's kind of important because the misconceptions that we have about the presidency, about the duty of the president, about the role of government as a whole, we need to remember. We need to relook at this and hash it out because giving him poor grades, if you are conservative or Republican in any way, shape, or form, if you're going to grade the president, you need to grade him based on the duties of what the president's supposed to do and the power that he has compared, or she has, if it's a woman president, compared to Congress or compared to the Supreme Court or compared to the other branches of government. We need to actually keep that in mind instead of doing the populist thing of thinking, well, the president has the power to do whatever they want to, and why didn't you get this done? How could you? How could you fail us? The final category that they created was the institution of the presidency and government. And they give him a F minus. I didn't even know you could do an F minus. But at the same time, let's see what they have to say. This again, according to Jay Caruso from the Dallas News, as an editorial piece. Trump's impetuous and inability to deal with criticism compel him to lash out, bring shame to the office of the presidency. He lies about the most insignificant issues. His attacks on members of Congress, including those in the GOP, the Justice Department, and the FBI, along with the intelligence community, are disgraceful. His advocacy for prosecuting his political rivals provides ammunition for those who label him authoritarian. No, it's just calling them out. That's what you do in politics, is you call out your opponents, and what you should be doing. His constant attacks on the press, along with support for weakening libel laws to make it easier to sue the media, should concern any person even with a fraction of interest in the First Amendment. It's the final grade that makes Trump so dangerous to the Republican Party and especially the conservative movement. Sure, he's implementing conservative policy, but his awful approval ratings, which are now in the high 30s overall, and worse favorability ratings will do lasting damage by making conservatism unpalatable to people who do not already identify as conservative. Trump won an election by winning Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin by a mere 70,000 votes combined. To win future elections, Republicans must expand that base. Let's stop right there for a second. Republicans do need to expand the base, and I agree with that. How do you expand your base on ideology? I give Trump more credit for this. They give him an F-. I give him a C. Because you know what? First off, no president in the last 100 plus years has actually abided by the role of the presidency based on what the Constitution allowed the presidency to do. As long as we have any fourth branch of government, that is the agencies and departments that are under the executive branch, as long as we have the EPA, and as long as we have the FDA, and as long as we have the DOE, the Department of Education, and as long as we have any other agency or department like that, the federal government and the presidency is not abiding by the Constitution, period, end of story. That's just the way it is. So no president in the last 100 plus years has actually abided by the Constitution. So to grade him poorly on that, you should vote and grade every president for the last 100 plus years on that, except for maybe a few that have tried to start limiting those, like President Reagan, but still they were there. You can't do it. First off, calling them out does not mean he's abusing his power by controlling them. He's just calling them out. That's what you're supposed to do in politics. Hey, I don't like my opponent because they said X, Y, and Z, and they advocated for something against what I wanted. Second off, if you're going to expand the base, what's the one thing that you get respect for people from? You respect them when they stand on principle. You respect them when they stand and they do not waver on their views, when they do not waver on what they believe in. That is when you respect them. You may not always agree with them, but you'll respect them because they never cower, they're never weak, and they never apologize for what they stand for. And when you do that, you earn respect. And when you preach conservatism at the individual basis and you teach individualism, you're going to win over people to the conservative movement. And Trump, well, he hasn't wavered from any of his positions. And that's a good thing that shows respect. This is The Voice of Reason. Hour number 2 coming up. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into The Voice of Reason. It's a Wednesday morning. Welcome into it. Starting off a brand new day. You're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Trying to start off a morning, trying to wake up, sip on the coffee, sip on the energy drink, do what you do in the morning. I don't know, how many people actually try and exercise or do yoga or something in the morning? If I didn't have to wake up at 4 a.m., I would totally try that. I would totally try to actually be active and wake up and do something productive in the morning rather than roll out of bed and pretend that I'm still asleep until 6 a.m. rolls along. It's very difficult that early, but if some people do, and then hopefully I can give you that energy in the morning while you're listening to the show and try and work out or do your yoga stretches or whatever in the morning in that sense. So nonetheless, it's the end of the week it's the day before the greatest day of the week, which I think we should celebrate today. Welcome into it. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK, broadcasting on KQAM Radio now, along with KGPT TV, channel 2610 on the Great Plains Television Network. We are broadcasting here in the Wichita local area and appreciate you tagging along. We're all over social media as well, by the way, on Facebook, the Voice of Reason page, the KQAM page, on Twitter at Hoosier Reason, and the Facebook Live feed, which if you're watching that, we got some fun new graphics and everything on there. Check it out. It's growing and expanding and doing very, very well. I do appreciate it if you like the page, if you share the feed every day. Let's grow this. Let's make it great. Let's make it good, and let's do something productive, shall we? 721-8255. Last hour, we had some fun with the president's grade for the first year in office, and you can still comment on that if you'd like to. I do want to move along, though, and talk about some more statewide issues now. It is important, though. Even though we don't have as much say at the federal level, obviously, it is important to kind of keep that understanding of what the role of the presidency and the role of the government really is. Because if we don't do that, then we just assume the president should be doing everything that they say they're going to, which they can try and advocate for, but that doesn't always mean they're going to get it done. If they say they want to repeal Obamacare, then they have to have congressional approval to make that happen, along with the movement that they're trying to do themselves. They have to work together, and if Congress doesn't want to work on it, then is it really the fault of the presidency for not getting it done? That's the problem we have to worry about. But what's been the number one biggest issue floating around lately at the national level? What's been the big national scare that we've had lately that is an issue? And don't get me wrong, it is definitely an issue, and we need to address it. It's just been gone about the wrong way. And that is sexual harassment. Or, I'm sorry, sexual harassment. Sexual harassment. Because I don't know when we changed from harassment to harassment, but now the media just calls it sexual harassment. Have you been harassed? How many hairs are you talking about? No, have you been harassed? I can see them trying to change that phraseology in the thesaurus or the dictionary. This is how you pronounce it. It's not harassment, it's harassment. It's moved to Kansas officially. There are numerous states now, because of the sexual harassment cases all over the country, where now state legislators are trying to create sexual harassment training for elected officials. And I have a really hard time with this. Sexual harassment should be a very, very easy thing to avoid. And I'm not saying that it's not an issue. Absolutely do we have an issue. We have women that get, that people try to abuse them. They try to rape them. They try to be a little touchy-feely at work. They say derogatory things. They become stalkerish. There are creepers in the world all over the place, and it's sad. But it's a very easy fix. It's very easy to fix this thing, and it's called common decency and common sense. This show, if you're relatively new to the show, it's the voice of reason. We talk about reason. We talk about common sense. We talk about the average Joe Schmo and what we do on a daily basis. And sexual harassment should be a very easy thing to get rid of. It's called traditionalism, and it's called common sense and decency. Let me set an example for you. If you're walking into a workplace, an office job, and you're sitting around the water cooler, and you're having a sip of water, and you're chatting with your friends, and an attractive lady walks by, what's the proper response? Do you acknowledge and say, "Hi, good morning," and then you move on your day? Or do you say, "Oh, hey there, little lady, how you doing?" and then smack her on the back end? The common decency thing would be to say, "Hey, good morning, how are you?" and then move on. End of story. Now, we have to apparently have training to teach us how to do that. We apparently have to have training to teach us to say, you're not supposed to say, "Well, hey, they're good looking," and then smack her on the back end. That's not how you approach a lady. Not only is it, even if you're attracted to her, that's not how you get her attention. This is not college anymore. This is not high school anymore. It's not middle school where you pull the pigtails of the girl in front of you because you like her. It's common decency. But nowadays we have to have training on it to teach you not to do those things, not to walk into a room and smack her on the behind and say, hey there, good looking, how you doing today? That's not what you do. And I know I'm making a joke out of this, but seriously, if we have to have training for this, then we have lost all common sense in society. Kansas is among roughly 1/3 of all state legislatures that do not require lawmakers to receive training about what constitutes sexual harassment. According to the Associated Press, this week legislators from both the Republican and Democrat parties will be able to attend sexual harassment training conducted by the YWCA of Topeka. But despite recent recommendations by the Kansas City-based Women's Foundation for mandatory training, legislative leaders say they can't require training without passing a law since legislators are not employees. They're not technically employees. They're not full-time. So therefore, you have to pass a law saying to make it mandatory, but it's kind of one of those things where you should probably just go. But what can you possibly learn from the training of that sense other than the common decency? Don't say, hey, they're good looking, how you doing? So I actually Googled and I printed off, according to WikiHow, the signs of sexual harassment. And I want to take a phone call here as well, but the question is, what constitutes to you as sexual harassment, and should we require training? They said that the latest training and the latest guidelines for sexual harassment issues haven't been updated since 1990. I'm pretty sure the idea of sexual harassment has not changed since the year 1990, so I'm not sure what needs to be edited or updated with new versions for the issue of sexual harassment. And don't get me wrong, there are still weirdos, and apparently we have to have this because there are creepers that still do these things in general public. We hear all the time about the story of the employee that tries to treat his employer, or I'm sorry, the employer that tries to treat the employee with a little bit of disrespect. It's like, hey, if you want that promotion, and that's sick, and that's wrong. And I had to say, I've said this before, but I respect my wife a whole lot because she is so strong-willed, and it almost falls into the category of the bullying, because it's the blackmail, it's the bullying of that sense, and either you do what I want you to, or else I'm going to beat you up or abuse you in some way, shape, or form. That includes sexual harassment. And that happens all the time. And I am attracted to strong-willed women, to where if that happened, and they tried this ad nauseum over and over, hey, if you need that promotion, then you better do some stuff with me, then she's going to turn around and deck him. And that's it. And there doesn't need to be any filing. There doesn't need to be any lawsuit. There doesn't need to be anything. If you try to come on to me and you tried to take it a little bit too far, I'm going to deck you. End of story. And make you back off. That's how society should work. We don't need the legal system in the middle of this. We don't need to be scared of everybody and turning the corner and looking towards mother and running to mommy and daddy every single time something bad happens. And in this metaphor, mommy and daddy would be the government or the legal system. Oh, he sexually harassed me. Did you punch him? Did you kick him in the groin and say, how dare you do that again? Don't do that again. Did you defend yourself? Did you spray him with mace if he tried to come on to you? Do something to protect and defend yourself. We need to start learning again in society about individualism, which we always talk about, and individualism in the sense that we need to understand that the only person that's going to look out for you is looking out for you is you yourself. It's like the robber breaking into your home. Are you going to wait and call the police and hunker down under your bed or in the basement or in the bathroom, crying and weeping, waiting for the police to get there? Or are you going to pull out the firearm and defend your home? What's the response? The police can't be there all the time to stop it from actually happening. They can only be there to clean up the mess afterwards. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Should it be mandatory for the sexual harassment training for the state legislators? And should it be updated for the 1990s version of what harassment technically is in the workplace? Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Well, I'm going to wait for the green light anyway.
Oh, hello. How we doing?
Hey, happy.
Hey, what's going on, sir?
Well, if they don't know how to sexually harass already, why do we need to train them?
Train them on how to harass?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that what sexual harassment training is? I would say sexual harassment prevention training.
Well, again, that's the nice little terminology and phraseology they like to use. So, yeah, I guess we got to train them on how to properly harass. It's a good point there. Meyer and I appreciate that. I looked up the definition on the sexual harassment, on what it all entails, because in my mindset, I see that as if you're coming on too strong to a coworker or a peer and you make it a little awkward or creepy. If you are a little touchy-feely when you're not supposed to be touchy-feely, the guy that likes to come to work and give you a big old hug and like to grab something while they're giving you a big hug. That's not the best thing. And it happens, by the way, to guys, too, the women that think that they can use their feminine wiles to get what they want in the workplace or wherever they may be by being a little too flirtatious in the workplace. What happened to the flirtation in the workplace? And I'm not advocating for it by any means. But don't you remember before that a lot of times coworkers used to actually get married eventually because they worked with each other a long time and they kind of fell for each other, and there was a little bit of flirting in the workplace, and there was that tension, and there was that whatever. And nowadays, are you kidding? If anybody tried that, poof, sexual harassment. They could do that at any time. We hear the stories about business owners who won't have at all closed door meetings with females at all, whether they're interviewing them for the job, whether they're giving them a job evaluation, whether they're just chatting with them about their duties and what the project is for the day. They won't have a closed-door meeting. Because not only if the female dislikes him or is upset about a promotion that he gave to somebody else as opposed to her, then all she's got to do is make the claim. Nowadays, without any due process, without any proof, all you got to do is make the claim, and then boom, it may not hold up in court, but at least it'll damage the company and damage that individual to where it destroys their reputation, and then she got her vengeance. And how many women do you know that actually go out for vengeance? How many women or guys do you know hold a grudge and actually go after somebody because they have a grudge against them for whatever reason, or just a personality conflict? So we need to be very clear on how and very careful on how we approach this. And again, it should just be the basic common sense decency. But how to identify sexual harassment according to WikiHow? Number one, understanding what qualifies as sexual harassment, identifying behavior like stalking, cyber stalking, a pattern of menacing behavior, or communicating threats to your safety. Makes sense, but it's very vague, isn't it? A pattern of menacing behavior. Would that be starting a conversation? You have a crush on somebody you saw a new work coworker. She's very attractive. You come up, hey, how are you? Welcome to the company. I'm so-and-so. Let me give you a tour around. Let me show you a little bit of that. How you doing? See the response. Is that menacing behavior? Maybe she's annoyed. Maybe she's in a relationship and not married, so she doesn't have a ring, but he doesn't know that. But is that menacing behavior? Hey, you look really pretty today. Your hair looks nice. You got really pretty shoes on today. Creeper, you're looking at my legs. Come on. Number two, note any quid pro quo. Quid pro quo, Clarice. You might be called into your boss's office, whereupon he shuts the door and puts his hands on your thigh. When you object, he says, do you want that promotion I was telling you about? Yeah. That's very clear on what's okay and what's not okay. And that's definitely not okay. Now, on the other hand, as I just mentioned, though, at what point do we say, it didn't really happen, but she had a grudge against him because maybe you gave that promotion to somebody else, and now she's looking for vengeance. She had that 5-minute closed-door meeting, and now she's out there telling everybody that what you did behind that closed door. How can we trust? Should we just take the word of everybody? Because then it's a he said, she said, and then you're destroying reputation of somebody for lying or manipulating or creating a scene. But it happens all the time in society. We could avoid all of this, all of it, if we held ourselves accountable and responsible, and we did the common decency thing. It's a very simple thing. You don't need training to teach you how to do it. It's called common sense and common decency. I don't know how many times I can say it. Analyzing your own participation in harassment. First off, understanding the full scope of workplace sexual harassment. For example, making demeaning statements about women or men in the workplace could qualify as sexual harassment, even if you're not talking about sexual activities. Just talking about women or men in a vague term. Women can't drive very well. There, I just created a sexual harassment case for everybody listening that's a female. I mean, is that what we're talking about? And then not to mention analyzing your own participation in the harassment. Accepting that you're going to do it anyways. And there's the kicker. This entire hashtag #MeToo movement that's trying to generalize this and create something that's even bigger than what it's intended to be, it's a dangerous process because this is what it's done. It is the same mentality as what they're teaching at the universities right now, telling the young generation that they're by genetically going to judge people based on their race. that they're genetically going to judge someone not on their character but on the skin color or whatever, that we have white privilege and that we need to acknowledge and apologize for our white privilege, that we need to apologize for our genetic racism, thinking that we're going to judge a black person or a Hispanic person or an Asian person or whoever based on the color of their skin and the surroundings that they're in, that we're going to judge them based on that. Genetically, we're going to do that. It's out of our control. We're already going to do it by default, according to these individuals. And that's what they're saying about sexual harassment. But genetically, we're going to sexually harass somebody, because when you see that attractive lady walk by you in the hallway and you look down a little bit and you check her out for a second because you think she's attractive, you have already sexually harassed her and she has the right to come after you. Or vice versa for a women to men. Women to men. But this is the control. We talk about it to us, to you and I. It's common sense that we actually understand common decency and what's right and what's not okay, because we understand reason and common sense and common decency. Yes, ma'am. By the way, where did that come from? Where did that go? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I say that to everybody that I can. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. All right. Very respectful. If they're older than me, then they have superiority over to me for the most part. And I'll give them a yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. We don't do that anymore, because the progressives have taken away that common courtesy. The progressives have changed the norm in society to where we don't respect one another the way that we need to. The progressives are the ones that are acting like the Neanderthals, thinking about the whole free love movement. We can do whatever we want to, anytime we want to. We can do drugs. We can have relations. We can commit crimes. We can do whatever we want to. We can say whatever we want. We can burn any flag. We can kneel during the national anthem. We can say anything or do anything we want to at all, because we shouldn't have restrictions or we shouldn't have any type of bubble that we're supposed to be in from society. We can do anything. And by that mentality has led to the sexual harassment of people thinking they can get away with anything without any repercussions, because we no longer understand the cause and effect symptom here. And now they're saying, oh, look at the sexual harassment. Why is this coming up all of a sudden? Why? It's because you've led to this environment thinking that you can just do whatever you want to without any repercussions. Just imagine your own policies have created the negative effects. Shocker when it comes to the progressive movement, right? This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
By the way, listener on Facebook Live, listener Joe mentioned the grade for President Trump. A grade A. A for the first year in the office, doing more things than any president has done really in the last who knows how long, being more productive. Him and Reagan kind of on the same path, getting things done. I can go along with that. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Your thoughts: should our state legislators go through the sexual harassment classes and training on what not to do with sexual harassment? I have to learn to retrain myself to say that word, apparently. I have to do the new harassment training. Obviously go, listen to what they have to say, because we always want to improve ourselves, but at the same time, it's a very basic, easy concept. Do not stretch that boundary. Do not push that envelope. Be courteous, be respectful, and be traditional. Say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and we don't do that anymore, which is why it makes me very sad. So we need to get back to the positives in society and be able to actually do things the right way again. 721-8255, 721-TALK. Bottom of the hour break coming up here. When we come back, we'll shift gears a little bit into some of the legislation at the statewide level, other than the sexual harassment training for our legislators, and whatever else is on your mind. Lots to get to. I don't think we're going to get to everything we wanted to today. Why? Well, because we're just that awesome and we just dissect things the way they need to. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
For your daily dose of reason.
Are you insane?
I don't know. Just ignore him.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Great to have you along today on a Wednesday morning. Halfway through the week, you see the light at the end of the tunnel. I know you're happy about that. What do you say? I think I want to play a game real quick, just for a minute. We got a caller on the line as well we're going to take. But the game is sexual harassment or not sexual harassment. In two different scenarios. You're a guy in the workplace, and one of your coworkers, an attractive female, walks by, and you can say, "Good morning. Boy, your hair looks really nice today. You look pretty." Sexual harassment, not sexual harassment. Up to you. As opposed to, "Good morning. Your hair looks so flowing today, it goes down the middle of your back to your bra strap." It's sad, right? We have to actually have this game. "Good morning. Hey, those heels really look good. You got pretty shoes." Okay. "Hey, I love the way your heels make your calves look today." "Hey, I love that blouse you're wearing. That's pretty. Is that new?" To, "Hey, I love that blouse. It kind of shows a little bit deep into your chest." Okay, you get the point. Training completed, everybody. Hooray! We get to actually move forward. And can I graduate and get my certificate now? 721-825-5721 Talk. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning. This is Sean.
Sean, what's going on, my friend?
Well, you just have to bring up this subject of sexual harassment.
Well, I mean, if our state legislators have to go through this training...
I almost feel harassed. I almost feel harassed because I have to deal with this.
See, exactly. Well, if our state legislators have to go through the training, I guess we should as well. I just gave you the curriculum. Did you pass it?
Well, yeah, I passed it.
Okay,
sure.
okay. There we go.
But now I'll tell you what. Of course, we have to do this on an annual basis. And first time I guess it was the second time I had to take it, I decided, let's push this and see how long before they, threaten me with my job before I take this online course,
Sure.
And it doesn't take long before they say, if you don't take that today, you can't come to work tomorrow. So, these companies are taking it seriously, and probably for a really good reason.
Sure.
But one thing I have noticed, and I've got a couple points on this whole subject, but one thing that I have noticed is these sexual harassment courses that we have to take are produced by third company, quote-unquote, experts in the subject matter.
That is true.
They are not written by your local HR department. And there's a reason for that. It gives them cover for when when an employee does something really stupid and crosses the line, that it gives them cover and say, hey, you can't sue us. We did everything we could. We even hired an expert to teach our people.
We gave you the national curriculum. You're right.
Much.
We gave you the training of the national curriculum. So if you failed, that's on the fact that you didn't abide by the national curriculum given to us, not our own standards, because you found the loophole within our curriculum.
Right. Well, or the employee ignored it despite our best efforts to try and protect our other employees.
Right.
And so it's really written, while I think they want good workplace environments and whatnot, they do. They truly do.
Sure.
But it really is written to give them cover from future lawsuits by a disgruntled employee to be able to claim that the company ignores these things and doesn't believe in a harmonious work environment. Now, let's move on to the legislators, though. I am in full agreement we should make these guys go, not guys, but all members of the House and Senate go through this, and I'll tell you why. If you look in the room there when they're in session, you see a bunch of people that probably entered the workplace in the 60s and 70s, just due to their age. That's when they did it. Now, what also happened in the 60s and 70s was a vast majority of our women started entering the workplace, in a professional manner. That's when it started. And there were, if you look back in history, there were a lot of men that were very bitter about the fact that women were taking over their jobs.
Sure.
Okay? And that is exactly the generation that you're looking at in our legislature. Are those people, and I'm not saying that they all have this overt, and that they're all guilty of hating women and whatnot, but they didn't know how back in the 60s and 70s to act appropriately, okay? And there was a lot of stuff that happened back then. Well, those people never that went in, they later became business owners of their own. Okay, probably sold or retired or did whatever, and now they're legislators. Doing public service and for all good reasons. But they never really had to go through this evolution, and I don't think that necessarily they totally get it. And I think it's time that maybe we help them get it a little bit better. These are people that are in positions of power because they were elected, and they have, generally they're fairly wealthy individuals, not all of them, but, they're people of means, or they wouldn't have that, be able to afford to run for office and
well, let me ask you this, Sean. Sure, let me ask you this, because you're right, and I mean, you're right that there are traditional individuals that still sometimes or may view some of the older individuals that are in official positions like that may view women as, hey, you're not supposed to be there. You're supposed to be traditionally not working, staying at home, whatever they view. And I get that. Would that be more, however, though, if they treat them a little more derogatory in that sense because they don't respect them being a woman in that position, would that be more of a discrimination issue as opposed to a sexual harassment? Because I don't know if those guys would be coming on to them as an attractiveness, trying to take advantage of them because they're a woman, or just opposed to that they're bitter because a woman's telling them what to do, and therefore they don't like that. I mean, would there be a difference there between the sexual harassment and just a woman discrimination?
Oh, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all in the subject matter. I mean, people have different motives for being disrespectful to others, whether it be women, gays, whatever. People have different motives for being disrespectful.
Sure.
And when it gets down to sexual harassment, whatever you want to call it, when it gets down to it, it really is disrespect.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not respecting the other person for who they are, what they bring to the table, and how we work together in an environment.
Sure.
A cohesive environment. And if we really boil it down to, instead of calling it sexual harassment, we call it just basic disrespect for others,
and that's what it comes down
to.
I
think it makes more sense, and that's the signal that we need to get across to everybody. But I think that our legislators and whatnot, they are in a special position where they have been told that they are special because they got elected by all these people, and they become a little bit bulletproof to it. They get to go up to Topeka where they're not with their spouse. Okay, they're in a hotel room, or they've got, kind of a dorm room situation with a roommate, with their fellow, legislator, that they're sharing a place, and there's, you start with locker room talk and, you start with all that stuff, and pretty soon it's still disrespectful. And we need to let them know that, hey, knock it off. You are representing, so let's represent in everything we do.
Well, that's a good point. Sean, I appreciate it, my friend. No, you're right. And it, like you mentioned, and like we've mentioned, it comes down to the basics of respect and common decency. Respect another human being, regardless of who they are. Respect the female, respect the male, respect them. I'm still of the favor that I say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. I do that. I know people don't like it. That's my father. That's my mother. If you're older than me, that's just respect. If you're the opposite sex, yes, ma'am, or it's, okay, whatever. And you just, I don't know. It never even crossed my mind to try and pursue something like that and be a little on the edge to where it's questionable on what's right and what's not okay when it comes to harassment or discrimination or any of that sort. You work with your peers, you work with your coworkers, you go about your day, and you can give compliments. I don't know when saying that someone looked nice today, or that their hair looked nice or that their shoes looked nice, or their or whatever, that they looked nice today. I don't know when that turned out to be harassing somebody, unless you continuously say it all day. Hey, you look really nice today. Hey, you look really nice today. I don't know. I don't know how you can constitute, unless you take it that far, to a harassment part. 721-825-5721 talk. Appreciate the call, Sean. Want to shift gears here just for a minute, because they do have some legislation that make the news. They always propose these bills, and sometimes it makes the news, sometimes it doesn't, whether it's important news, whether it's really non-important news. But some news did make, some legislation did make the news, and for you individuals advocating for the agricultural hemp, that bill has been officially introduced to the legislature, as that one goes to yesterday. That went to the members of the Kansas Senate, with a bill making it legal for state universities to conduct research on a plant capable of being processed into food, fabric, paper, and other materials. Now, this is the same bill, it sounds like, at least. I don't know if it's the exact same bill or not, but it's the same idea as what was proposed last year in the state legislature for agricultural hemp. Now, agricultural hemp, and I'm going to remind and reiterate again, whether you want just hemp, whether you want marijuana, legalization of marijuana, smoking marijuana, medical marijuana, whatever, whether you want all of it or only portions of it, you have to distinctly divide the two, or else it's not going to happen. We're more of a traditionalist state, and that's the common reality. And if you want to make a change, you have to be able to decipher between the two. And last year, we talked to the individuals advocating for the agricultural hemp bill, and it still didn't go through. House Bill 2182 was opposed by law enforcement organizations because their big concern is regulating it. Do they have the law enforcement capability of going around and regulating what's growing out in the field on whether it has THC levels, whether it does not have THC levels, and whether it's agricultural hemp or whether it's medical or recreational marijuana? But the bill would allow university research and public and private business development related to hemp and place the Kansas Department of Agriculture in charge of the licensing to the farmers. It would permit university research, but forbid commercial cultivation of the crop outside of state-sanctioned test plots. This is about the best, right? And I'm not saying whether it's good or bad. I'm just saying realistically, that's the best it's probably going to get this year. Start off with the testing. Prove your point that THC levels in it. And again, I'm all for the agricultural hemp. I think it's a fantastic idea. But you need to, number one, distinctly divide the two between hemp and marijuana, and start off with the testing. Start off with the research. Prove that the hemp cannot grow alongside the THC-leveled marijuana, or if it can, how you're going to keep them divided. Because I don't know. The last I had heard that they cannot grow coincidingly together, that it cannot spread, that it will not kill off other plants, that it's actually good for the soil, and that it's not going to have any levels of THC. Because remember, the THC level needs to be below 0.3% in this agricultural hemp, which means you can smoke an entire field and all you're going to do is get a really bad headache. But it's not going to have THC levels. It cannot provide intoxicating influence sought by the pot users on this. So in the past, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation took issue with the cultivation of industrial hemp, complicating the state's work on criminal investigations into legal marijuana activity. The KBI shared frustration with the cost of laboratory testing to differentiate between legal and illegal sampling of the plant. Here's how you should probably go about this. And giving tips to the individuals wanting to make this happen, the advocates, the organizations wanting to promote this. My opinion, here's how you make it happen, is that you go along with just the testing of without trying to push too far into the commercial side. You differentiate between the agricultural hemp and the legalized marijuana with THC levels, and you try and find some donors. You try and create, whether it's a GoFundMe or you try and find some big special interest groups, or you try and find someone with a lot of money, and you come to them and you ask them to almost privatize the research with some special interest money, with money that they sink into the university as their own grants per se, or donations, in order to make this. So that way it's really cost neutral to the government. We're already in financial binds at the statewide level with, of course, everything we've talked about with education, Medicaid, with everything else going on. There's a lot of things that need to be taken care of and addressed financially, and to add more finance obligations to the state government for something like the research of agricultural hemp is not going to be looked kindly upon the Republicans in the state that are predominantly traditionalists and that don't like the idea of marijuana in any shape or form, and they don't distinguish between the two. The only way I see this actually going through, honestly, and I'm not saying whether it's I'm not giving my opinion here, just rationally, reasonably, I'm looking at it. The only way that I see it actually going through is if you find the money, if you find special interest, and if you advocate for it and saying, look, we want to do the research. We're not going to do it commercially yet. We want to prove to you what this is going to look like. We want to prove to you with the test of having agricultural hemp growing next to THC leveled marijuana and what the effects are, that we can make sure that there's not going to be THC levels, what the benefits are going to be for the soil, X, Y, and Z, and show all the benefits compared to the concerns of what they have. Do the tests in the lab and have it financed through a private donor, and then come back another year or two later and say, look, these are the results. Now can we move forward with this? It's a long process. It's going to be a frustrating process, but realistically, I would say that's how you approach this. Just my humble opinion. This is the Voice of Reason on KQAM.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 2. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. Coming up in hour number 3, we're going to be talking with David Rosler. He is the writer, producer of the the movie The Orbiter, as a Christian film that's been kind of the alternative from mainstream Hollywood, kind of an alternative type of movie, and it seems to be censored all over social media. Hasn't been promoted very nicely because, well, many don't want it to be promoted. So we'll talk with David Rosler. He is the writer, he's the producer, he's the creator of the Orbiter movie. We'll talk about that coming up in hour number 3. Plus, it's going to be your calls. We still haven't gotten to half of what I wanted to talk about today, but it is open lines to you. 721-825-572. Talk another social media message coming in about the grade for President Trump, giving him an overall B, saying that he has been very productive this year. Just wish that he would step away from the Twitter account because they don't like what he does with Twitter, and that could potentially get us into trouble with North Korea and some of the other shenanigans happening in the world. But overall, with the tax reform, with trying to repeal Obamacare, with getting rid of the individual mandate, with holding the establishment accountable and calling them out, it seems to be very productive and a big fan of something like that. And I would agree. And the Twitter, look, that's... like we mentioned before, it's not going to go away. It's his outlet directly to you, away from the mainstream media, because if he didn't have that, imagine what his approval rating would be right now if the only news you got from President Trump was what CNN and MSNBC told you. Just imagine. Imagine what you'd be thinking of him and what he was doing right now. First off, usually as conservatives, we would say, okay, well, he must be doing pretty good if they're hating on him that much. But at the same time, we wouldn't know the real truth. We wouldn't know what's really happening. So Donald Trump with his Twitter account, I guess we could ask, would Ronald Reagan be doing the same thing? Would Ronald Reagan have used a Twitter account in order to get information across? He was against the media. He would have advocated against the media. So my overall grade was a B minus-ish. Listener Joe on Facebook gave him a grade of A. And listener David on Facebook gave a grade letter of B. So overall, kind of across the board, interesting grades for his first year. If you want to do so, you can shoot me a message on social media or on Facebook. Give me a call here as well, and we can talk about that. Plus, when we come back, there's been the ever-growing movement, especially with the election last year between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, about, they're both terrible, and let's go with a third-party candidate. And now we have third-party candidates running for congressional seats, what they've tried but have failed miserably, and now with independent candidates running for the governor's race in the state of Kansas. What does it take to run a successful third-party campaign? Because all the odds and all the money and all the influence is all stacked against you. How do we go about that? We'll talk about that in hour number 3 as well. It's all here on The Voice of Reason. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. Hour number 3, The Voice of Reason coming up. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. Hour number 3, the Voice of Reason. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's a Wednesday morning. Can you believe that the week's already gone by so fast? The light's at the end of the tunnel. You can see it, you can smell it, you can taste it. And today's our day, baby. The carpe diem all over this place. We're going to have to clean it up with a mop once we're all said and done with today because we're going to be so gosh darn productive. And all of that without, mind you, being sexually harassing of other individuals. Welcome into it. 721-8255-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, shoot me a message all over social media on Facebook, on the Voice of Reason page, the KQAM page, the Twitter at Hoosier Reason. Also on the Facebook Live feed we have rolling. Also, we also want to welcome aboard day number 2, being broadcast live on KGPT TV channel 2610 with the Great Plains Television Network and the InfoWars Network with the channel that they're on right there. So appreciate them picking up the show as well. The fastest growing program, I can't even say radio program anymore because we're on TV now. The fastest growing program in the entire state of Kansas. We appreciate that very much so. Welcome in. 721-8255-721-TALK. Let's shift gears just a little bit. Lots to cover today. And I'm excited to get our next guest on the show here. He is the writer, producer, creator of the movie Orbiter, orbitermovie.com. You can go and check it out. And having a little difficulties with this. Now, you and I always believe in the idea that we can expand our idealism to whatever we want to, express our views, express our opinions, have different art in other ways, and there's different forms of art. There's actual painting art, and even in painting art, there's different forms of that. There's the abstract art, which I just totally don't get. There's the classical art, there's the photos of individuals, I mean, however you want to do it. Then you have art as in music, and music takes on different forms of music and different forms of art. You have radio. Me coming on the radio and doing a 12-minute monologue and talking is an art form. The average individual has, 8 to 12 seconds of an attention span. It is my duty to keep your attention for a whole 12 minutes instead of only 12 seconds. How do I do that? I have to create an art form in order to get the information out and to keep it somewhat entertaining. And then, of course, there's movies. And you have movies. That is an art form. The lighting, the setting, the dialogue, the discussion, the importance of the message you're trying to get across. It's always an art form, and art should not be silenced, in my opinion, in any way, shape, or form, and it's up to you to decide whether you enjoy it or not. And especially with the movement, with how much Hollywood controls the dynamic of the discussion when it comes to Hollywood and when it comes to TV and when it comes to movies. They don't like any outsiders, quote unquote, coming in and creating a product that's not adjacent to theirs. So the progressives in Hollywood that are all about opency and transparency and loving everybody and everybody having an equal say, if anybody tries to compete with them in Hollywood, then of course they try and shut them down. And that's exactly what sounds like has been happening with the Orbiter movie, a Christian film that's not getting the attention that it needs to do. And we have on the show the writer, producer, creator of the movie, of the Orbiter, Mr. David Rosler on the phone with us. David, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How's everything out there in Wichita?
Hey, we're living the dream. It's cold, but we're still here, so I guess that's a good start.
You know, you expressed my opinion about about motion pictures being an art form perfectly.
It is.
I think you nailed it exactly right. That's very well done. All of us in the medium appreciate you for that.
Well, I mean, that's the way I've always seen it. No matter what it is, music, art, radio, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's an art form. If you are appealing to other people that are paying attention to you or your product, even woodcrafts. I got to say, I have family members that are woodcrafters or cabinet makers or work with wood. I mean, that is an art form. Whatever you do, if you put energy and effort and blood, sweat, and tears into it, it is your product, it's your craft, and it's your art form. And then you hope that people actually like it. So it's sad that some forms of art are actually being discriminated against.
Well, it is sad, and it's happening to us without question.
Let's first off, let's talk about the movie, The Orbiter. Talk about what it is, and then we'll get into how it's been trying to be silenced to some degree. But what is the movie, The Orbiter, that you're creating?
Well, Orbiter is a Christian film that takes place on the International Space Station. Just as nuclear World War III is beginning to break out on the surface of the Earth. And the film follows a couple of devout Christian characters who find themselves surrounded by agnostics and how the situation challenges their faith, and indeed how their faith and their knowledge of Scripture actually turns around and winds up saving the day. When described like that, I suppose it sounds a little corny, but it isn't. It's more like a Tom Clancy political thriller that just happens to take place in space, actually.
Sure.
With a heavy Christian theme. So that's what it's about, and its purpose is to try to get a little balance in the message. You've got tons of anti-Christian messages being bombarded at everybody from every angle, and you've got kids. Pew Research and others have found that the majority of people leaving college, not coincidentally, wind up leaving the Christian faith at the same time. So heavily influenced, so much peer pressure there is to abandon the faith. They don't want to be maligned. They don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be humiliated and called stupid and believing in fantasies and all of this sort of stuff. So they take the easy way out. And Orbiter, being the kind of film that it is, takes place in the International Space Station. It's in stereoscopic 3D, which of course makes things a bit more exciting at the theater. And if given my druthers, what I would rather, the best thing I could imagine that would happen is that we get word that hundreds of thousands of late teens to early 30s people are going out of their theaters saying, my parents were right. Maybe my faith is important and it's legitimate after all.
I'm excited to hear.
It's a small ambition. All we want to do is change the world.
Exactly. Well,
yeah,
I'm excited.
Not a big deal. Just make everybody allow everybody to get back on track.
Exactly. Well, I'm excited about the fact that I've seen a rise in these types of movies as of lately with the more of the traditional Christian theme to them, and that's exactly what we need. I did see, what was it, about a year or so ago, God's Not Dead, with that movie with the college student trying to challenge his professor, where they just accept the fact that God's irrelevant and that they can move on with the discussion of philosophy and so on and so forth thereafter. The other movie like Fireproof with the marriage and how you need to have the marriage based on faith and based on God. You have the other movie, what was it? The boy that saw Jesus, and that
Heaven is for real.
Heaven is real. Exactly.
That's a fairly powerful film.
Absolutely, and we're seeing a lot of these movies come more so into the mainstream than what they had before. The Star, that cartoon that just came out around Christmas time, that was really big in the theaters, and it's been a big movement to have a more traditionalized religious connotation and theme to a lot of messages, which is really good to see. Because you're right, we're seeing the atheist movement, so to speak, and I'm religious myself. I mean, it's not necessarily a religious show, but at the same time, conservatism and traditionalism in government and in politics falls back on the religious faith that we were founded on as a nation, and we need to remember that as we move forward. So it's really good to hear that we have more of these types of movies coming into more of the mainstream for the opportunity for people to see them, and as you mentioned, hopefully have that light come on and say, okay, there's something to this. Let me look a little bit deeper into it.
Well, I think you've got the purpose for what we're trying to do down pat. The idea is to get into the mainstream, and while these other films, some of them are very good, they're becoming just a little bit, and not to disparage anybody, but they're becoming, in my opinion, a little bit formulaic. Mm-hmm. It's the same formula. You've got a marriage in trouble, someone's ill in the hospital, and those can be very powerful films. Any theme can be powerful if it's well done on the screen.
Sure.
You can take two people in a box and have them in a box for 90 minutes, but if the dialogue is unbelievably compelling, people are going to be sitting on the edge of their seat for 90 minutes watching two people talk in a box.
Sure.
But the pardon me, I picked up a bit of a cold with this weather. My apologies. But yeah, we're trying to really bust that door down into the mainstream.
Sure.
Really, by putting the kind of films that people associate with the mainstream, and something like Orbiter that takes place in the International Space Station, with the kind of thriller aspect that has to it in stereoscopic 3D. I think this is the next big critical step to taking the Christian films out of where they are, which is somewhat marginalized, and put them right smack in the middle of the mainstream.
Sure. Well, and I mean, as you mentioned, with the same setup for all the other movies, it's a little bit different because, I would be scared to death just having that thriller excitement of, I could potentially be the only human being left alive after World War III ends on Earth, and I'm in the International Space Station. What to do now is kind of an interesting twist to how things are Potentially could be with the conflicts that are happening today. Talk about the response. We're talking with David Rosler, creator, writer, producer of the movie The Orbiter, orbitermovie.com if you want to check it out. And talk about the response that you've gotten from this, because this isn't mainstream Hollywood. It's kind of a project that you're doing yourself. What's been the response from the mainstream as of right now?
Well, what part of the mainstream? The industry isn't giving us much love. People like you and people down throughout the southern states are extremely excited about it. But we're having a great deal of trouble with the movers and shakers who control social media. We've been marginalized to the point, essentially, of invisibility. So that there can be no crowdfunding to raise the completion funds for the film, and they're very good at it. They're very good at stopping this kind of thing. The first week I was on the radio, I was on 7 radio shows. Kathy Schell, our associate producer, is turning out to be a brilliant person at booking me on the radio, and out of those 7 shows in the first week, the website got 6,000 additional hits. And according to the crowdfunding source, we're using a new one, but according to that old crowdfunding source, we supposedly got not a single donation, which is essentially, according to all the experts, essentially statistically impossible. You're going to get one. If nothing else, you could have a 1% rule, where you're going to have 1% of any number is going to do something, and 1% of 6,000 would be 60, and we're supposed to believe we got 0.
So they're telling you additional 6,000 people hit the website, but no one actually donated or actually helped out in any way, shape, or form.
And the website people even agreed that, the crowdfunding people even agreed that several thousand people in that week went to the crowdfunding, but they're located in the UK, and they're telling us not a single person donated. Now, you could say, well, maybe money is tight, and maybe the film isn't everyone's cup of tea, but when you see the esoteric things that people are donating to, somebody gets shamed on the internet with a silly picture of themselves, and they raise $40,000 to give them a dance party.
Exactly.
A dog gets bitten by a rattlesnake, and they raise $50,000 for the dog's vet bills. When was the last time that the plight of the Liberian chimpanzees weighed heavily on your conscience, Andy?
Well, that's been mindset for me. I've been advocating for that one for a long time.
If you remember Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp, when you were a kid on Saturday mornings, it could be a big deal.
Exactly.
But they raised $350,000. It goes on, and somebody raised thousands of dollars to save a pig at a raffle. And to think that 6,000 people, urged on by their most trusted radio hosts, who are hugely enthusiastic, some of them, about the project, and not one single one gave $1, is, according to every expert we've talked to in crowdfunding, essentially impossible. It's not unlikely. It's statistically impossible. So somebody's ripping us off, obviously.
Sure.
So now we're on Indiegogo, and we're going to give that a shot. But our links get hacked also. We were trying to crowdfund on Twitter, and somebody had broken into the Fundly, which was the second of the third crowdfunding sites we've tried. Somebody had hacked in and changed the code by one letter so that the links didn't work. We found that out for sure. So maybe it'll work in Indiegogo, but if you go to orbitermovie.com, there's no link for the fundraising. You would have to go to Indiegogo.com and search Orbiter Movie, and when you see the logo with Orbiter with the big gold cross where the T in Orbiter is, that's just click on that and you can put donations into that. Donations over $200 are being treated as investments, so you get a piece of the action. We're not just paupers here. But we're going to get there. We're looking for $240,000 only to complete the darn thing. And we're going to get there, but it's an enormous struggle, and these social media people. I don't know if you're familiar with what Project Veritas did with Twitter, but they went in undercover, like they did with Planned Parenthood and other places, and they sort of infiltrated the people who are working there and would meet with them for drinks after dinner or what have you. And they got them to say, they recorded them on tape, video, saying the most heinously malicious stuff against the president, against the supporters of the president. And these are the people who decide whether you get to be seen on Twitter or not.
Oh, absolutely.
These are the people.
These
silenced... are the people, and they hate us. They hate everybody who's right of center, anybody who's Christian. They come right out and they say it.
They've gone after him on Twitter, on Facebook, on a lot of the social media. You're right. It's very difficult. We've seen even talk show hosts that try and do the social media or the Facebook Lives or whatever they do on Facebook, and it's very difficult to actually reach people. They have to go out of their way searching for it as opposed to it actually popping up and some of them even being banned. So it is, you're right. I mean, it's being censored and monitored very, very closely in that sense. We got just about a minute left here. We got to let you go. David Rosler with Orbiter Movie. Check it out, orbitermovie.com. Looking for those donations, finishing up the movie. Ideally,
may I say one thing, Andy?
Yeah, please do. Go for it.
For the donations, go to Indiegogo.
Indiegogo.
Indiegogo, and simply search for Orbiter Movie, and it's practically the only thing that comes up.
Exactly. That's where you can donate for it. And ideally, if you're able to start seeing some of those funds flow in for that, when realistically would you like to have the movie finished?
We'd like to have it finished in the autumn, actually. We'd like to see it an autumn release. You can't really release a Christian film in the summer or around Christmas because the theater chains don't like to compete with the blockbusters.
Sure.
So, well, it's true. So we'd like to see we'd like to see Orbiter hit the theaters in the autumn.
I love it. Well, good luck to you, my friend. Hopefully you guys can get that going. I'm excited about seeing the movie myself once that does happen. David, it's a pleasure, my friend. Good luck to you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Always a pleasure there. David Rosler with the movie The Orbiter. Check it out, orbiter.com for the movie. Also, Indiegogo in order to donate if you'd like to do so. 25 minutes past the hour. Break. We'll get your calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
By the way, if you miss any of the show, you can always download the podcast at vor.podbean.com. You can always check out the podcast of the Facebook Live feed. And you can always watch a rerun now on KGPT TV at 6 o'clock at night. Stay here.
Are you a Hoosier-holic?
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Call in now at 721-8255. The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome to it. Good morning. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today on a Wednesday. I can't believe it goes by way too fast. Thanks again to David Rosler, author, producer, creator of the movie The Orbiter. You can check that out again, orbitermovie.com, if you choose to do so. Open lines to you for the last 20 minutes or so. We'd love to hear from you. 721-8255, 721-TALK, if you want to join into the program. Let's talk about, we've been kind of going back and forth a little bit today between state and national issues, which is fine. And I know that the issue this week has been the big push, and call your legislators, by the way, hint, hint, wink, wink. Call your legislators about the budget debate going on, because they need to make a decision by the end of this week. They are 2 days away from potentially shutting down the government. I say hooray, but not so many other people choose to do so. And if we actually choose to shut down the government because the Democrats having all control of the Dreamers issue and wanting to have the amnesty for the Dreamers, then we have lost. That is not on the negotiating table. That's not what we want. That's not what we should be advocating for, or compromise in the negotiation terms when it comes to Dreamers. Stand our ground, and if they choose to shut down the government, shut it down, baby, because I just don't care. 721-8255, 721-TALK. Let's take a phone call, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
My name is Eddie.
Eddie, good morning, sir. How are you?
Well, other than a cold, I'm fine. Hey, by the way, I just wanted to let you know that I enjoy watching you on television now.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Our first TV listener. All right.
Oh, hell, I shouldn't have cussed. Pardon me. But,
hey, that one's okay. That one's all right.
Okay. Anyway, the minute you said you were on, I just flipped on the old TV, said, you know me, I I just flipped it over, and there you were. It's beautiful. The video is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Perfect.
Seriously,
I love it. I'm so glad you're able to do that. It's now it's channel 2610 for those that have not been able to hear. We started this yesterday, and things are running. From what I hear, from what you're saying and what we've heard on the back end, things are running smooth. Everything's running good, and it's according to you, it's good quality.
Oh, the video is beautiful. The video, the audio needs just a little bit of work on.
Okay.
But the video is beautiful.
Fantastic.
And I'm curious, what is to the right of you? Because I see you turning to the right a lot sometimes.
Oh, it is actually the monitor, so I can switch the slides during the commercial breaks to have something pop up and to check to make sure the video is still running the way it needs to. The screen is actually right to my right here, so you may see me look over there as I monitor things, because I have it. And if you've been in a radio studio or if you see it, I have my two monitors in front of me for the radio stuff with my different sound effects and my online articles and my operational stuff, and then my monitor to the right over here is actually the monitor for the video stuff, so I can manage that as well.
Oh, I see. You know, that television station that you're on, it is over the air, and I have a over the air television antenna on my house. And really, it's not that. You know, anymore. Just go down to Walmart, and you can pick up one of those little old plastic antennas. They cost about $30, something like that, about the size of the palm of your hand. And there you go. Put it. My daughter has hers in her back window, believe it or not, and I have mine outside. And about 2 years ago, when I put up my first outside antenna, I actually went to that television station and knocked on their door to ask them where their transmitter was so I could point it in the right direction. Would you believe that they actually invited me in and showed me everything, and they were the nicest people on the planet?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
They were so kind to me, and I'm just Joe Blow wanting to know what direction to point my antenna. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you that beautiful, 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 beautiful.
Perfect.
A1. Beautiful, beautiful.
I love it, Eddie. I appreciate that call so much, and the kind words there with and I have to agree. I mean, Great Plains TV has been fantastic to work with. We threw the idea out actually to simulcast on TV just as kind of a Hail Mary idea of, hey, this is kind of cool. What if we tried something like this? And it's taken some time to try and figure out how to do it, the best way to be able to make it work. And lo and behold, here we are. And it started off, and it's really cool. I really appreciate what those guys have done and given the opportunity. I mean, it's local media, I got to say, whether you're on radio, whether you're on TV, whether you're on newspaper, a locally owned media affiliate, which guess what now? It's still, I have not jumped on board with a national conglomerate syndicated, type of deal. We are locally owned all across the board. Greg Stecklein owning KQAM and with Stecklein Communications, with Great Plains Television Network being locally owned with the local cable. We are sticking with that with our movement. It's going to grow statewide. We have more ideas in the works. Now that we know this is possible, the opportunities are endless. We have really, really cool things in the works. So I mean, you're absolutely right that we couldn't be happier working with those guys. I love being able to work with to both sides of this and making it happen and throwing the idea out and just saying, hey, I mean, if we were having a syndicated, national type of deal, this wouldn't be possible because they wouldn't like the idea. And the fact that local media says there's an opportunity here for us to create another opportunity of information, a different type of media platform, something different the viewers haven't been able to get a hold of lately, and an opportunity for us to sell it and advertise and create revenue for us, which at the end of the day, that's what we need, right? Radio station, TV stations, at the end of the day, that's how we are able to continue to do what we do and you do what you do. Is we do the advertising, the marketing, the radio, and that's what we're all about. So we really appreciate the opportunity all across the board on the radio and the TV side. Really, really excited about what we're doing here. So thank you so much for that, Eddie, and the kind words. Check it out again, 2610, 26.10 with KGPT TV. Usually the InfoWars channel, and they run it 24 hours a day with InfoWars and Alex Jones and all the shows that he has. And I know that they're actually working on their 24/7 platform. But as of right now, you can watch the show live 6 to 9 on KGPT 2610. And also the rerun of the show from 6 to 9 at night as well. That started last night as well, so you can watch the rerun of the show along with the podcast that I put online, along with the Facebook Live podcast that's up there for about a week or so. So whether you're looking at TV, radio, or internet, you have the opportunity to watch the show live or pre-taped at any time that you actually want to. So thank you so much for that, Eddie. 721-8255, 721-TALK if you want to join in. I do want to touch on just briefly the idea of third-party candidates. As you know, there's 3 independents running for the governor's race in Kansas. There are 3 independents, and the biggest one, of course, is Greg Orman, that sunk in, and that's collected close to $500,000 for the campaign so far when they filed their finance reports at the beginning of this month. And the big issue, he wrote a book a while ago, was it, back in about a year or so ago, A Declaration of Independence, How We Can Break the Two-Party Stranglehold and Restore the American Dream. And it got me thinking, because I have never been, and for the new listeners, you'll know, I have not been a proponent or an advocate in any way, shape, or form of third parties running for office. I just don't like it. I understand it. I just don't like it. And a lot of people may disagree with me, especially the libertarians that are probably, fuming right now, but it's okay. I don't like it for the sense that, unfortunately, I'm not agreeing with it, but I am saying that we have a two-party system in the country. We have Republicans and we have Democrats. If the Republicans continue to do the shenanigans they're trying to pull, then they will collapse and there will be a party that rises up out of the ashes of the Republican Party, but it's not going to be a third party right now that's competing against them. It's not going to happen. There are too many donors. There's too many special interests. There's too much money. There's too much power from the parties, from the Republicans and the Democrats. That's just the way it is. The only time the Libertarian candidate has won any office has been local seats. City council, maybe a county commissioner kind of thing. But state legislative, I don't know of any across the nation that have Libertarian seats that are being held. And at the federal level, there have been absolutely zero. And I've been thinking about the bigger movements because last year during the campaign with Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, people saying, I just don't like either of them. I'm going to vote third party. I'm not going to vote at all. I'm going to vote independent. I'm unregistering as a Republican. I'm unregistering as a Democrat. The Democrats messed me up because Bernie Sanders should have got the nomination. The Republicans messed me up because I despise Donald Trump and he's not a conservative. Whatever the case was in your own situation, people are leaving the parties, but not enough to make a difference. Not enough to do anything. And you can either talk about how every time which I agree with, every time a third-party candidate votes for a third party, they're taking away from someone ideologically closer to them, either the Republican or the Democrat, which is the way it's been. Some are saying that that's not the case. Some are saying that it doesn't matter. We're going to stand on principle, and either we're going to go down in flames and have the person least likely agree with me to run the things and destroy it, or I'm going to get everything I want to and have that purest form. But I was thinking about the best possible way for an independent to run a campaign. And this is all speculation because I don't agree with the concept. But if you're going to, because you want to change things, it's all the power to you. Hoorah, I'm all supportive of you trying to change things and make things better. If you believe in that, my humble opinion, the only way that you can get an independent to actually succeed in a campaign is to be a one-issue candidate. A one-issue candidate to run on one specific issue. You cannot create another party because the people don't want the party. That's why they left the old parties. You cannot be necessarily a party where you have a broad spectrum of different ideas all over across the board because they're going to blend with the Republicans or the Democrats somewhere. The only way I see it being any productively at state levels, at the governorship, at the national level, it doesn't matter, is to run on one issue, on a one-issue platform. I want to, for example, what we talked about today, the one big bill that's been addressed at the statewide level so far, agricultural hemp. The one issue I'm going to run, I'm going to get in there, and I'm going to get us agricultural hemp. That's what I'm going to do. And that's the only talking point that you have. And that's and it's very limited and that's very harmful. But at the same time, the most parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, already had the basis covered for most ideologies. And if you say that I agree mostly with the Republican, then what's the point of voting third party as opposed to voting Republican? Because then you know that the Republican actually has a chance, that the Republican's actually going to have a voice, that the Republican's going to have a little bit more of a say, as opposed to the independent that, what are they going to do? I'm not saying I agree with the process. I'm saying that's the reality of the process. Your thoughts on that? Maybe you have a different idea on how an independent libertarian or maybe just a non-affiliated altogether can actually win a campaign and actually, because you can raise all the money in the world like Greg Orman's doing and you can run as an independent, but are you going to go anywhere? He came in second in a congressional race, but that was because there was no Democrat, so the Democrats bumped up to him and partnered up with him in order to do that, and he still lost. If you have a Democrat in the race, as we do with the governorship, we have the Republicans, many of them. We have Democrats, many of them. And we have three different independents. tell me how you're going to win enough votes to actually win a governorship. It's not going to happen. 0.00% of you having a chance of winning with a Republican, with a Democrat, and with 3 independents trying to all steal the votes away. Let's go to the phone, shall we? 721-825-5721. Talk. Good morning. What's your name?
Hello, this is Andy. This is Gary.
Gary, what's going on, my friend?
Well, if I could just hark back to your other subject briefly.
Sure.
Would a sexual harasser eat?
Yes.
Probably Emerson, Biggins, or Twin Peaks, I'm guessing.
Emerson, Biggins, or Twin Peaks. Oh, so if you go there and you check out the attractions of either of those facilities, then you are sexually harassing some of those individuals.
It's possible. It's possible.
It is possible. Well, and that's the question, which brings up the point that we had a couple of days ago. At what point is it the fault of the male, whether we're talking about sexual harassment or whether we're talking about the controlling of masculinity of some degree, because we're biologically tuned to be attracted to the opposite sex. So if we see the opposite sex that's flaunting that at a restaurant or something like that, which, I mean, they are sponsors of the station, and I mean, it's not derogatory in any way, shape, or form, but it's realistic of where's the line drawn between going there to enjoy the view and the spectacle things that you have in front of you, as opposed to them, where that line's drawn for you becoming creepish and then you stalking and then the sexual harassment begins. Or would a woman be able to claim sexual harassment by working at a place like that and then saying you looked at me inappropriately and therefore I'm going to come after you?
Exactly, and it the hit all in the look. Is the look of a lust, or is it a look of appreciation of a form of art?
Well, it's a good point.
But anyway, and just anecdotally, real quick, I've had one female coworker ask me to rub her back because her back was sore. I've had a couple giving me Christmas kisses on the cheek.
Sure.
But it really depends. You can't just walk up to somebody and pat them on the butt and expect them not to be shocked. It takes a relationship before you can be touched.
Oh, exactly. It takes a relationship, but it also takes that common sense, decency, and respect. You're right. You're not going to walk up to a coworker who you have just a limited interaction with and come up and give them a kiss on the cheek and pat them on the back. I mean, that doesn't work. At the same time, in Europe, guys and girls together, regardless of who they're coming up to, kiss each other on both cheeks as they walk up to introduce one another, and that's just the way their culture is. If they did that here, they'd be filed against sexual harassment because how dare you actually come up and kiss me like that? You're right. It's the culture, and we just have to have just basic common sense. I don't understand why there needs to be a sexual harassment training to learn what not to do when all you should be doing is doing the basic common sense things that everybody should be doing on a normal basis anyways.
Well, and the manual for this is all in that one book we call the Bible, but the Bible says teach your children, and a generation has dropped that prerogative. They've not taught their children.
Sure.
And Jesus taught the principles of the 10th commandment. He said, if you look upon a woman to lust, you've broken that do not commit adultery commandment.
Sure.
And so when the sexual harassment is going on in a workplace, you not only break that, you're breaking the 9th commandment, thou shalt not covet. You're breaking the thou shalt not steal. You're stealing their dignity. You're breaking there's more than one. You're breaking a lot of commandments. And if we would just go back to the Bible and
you know what's funny, Gary, about all of that, because you're absolutely right. It's the traditionalism, whether you look at it as a norm of society or whether it's the religious aspect. That's exactly what the progressives have told you to disobey and not listen to, because we're better than that. We don't have to hold ourselves to these standards. We can do whatever we want to at any time because it's our body, it's our mind, it's our self, and our individualism. We can do whatever we want to without being held accountable, because that's my life and you can't tell me what to do. But now we're seeing the results of that, which is a society where we have no boundaries.
And I think President Trump is going to help beat that back.
Well, I really hope so. Gary, I love it. I appreciate the call, my friend. You're absolutely right. The preaching that the progressives have done for a long time, telling us to ignore those rules and ignore those common sense things because it's not right and you can just do whatever you want to. Why should you have to hold yourself to that level? That's not the level I want to hold myself to. Now we're seeing the response and the results of that cause and effect. Action and reaction. It's a very tricky thing. I know it's very difficult to comprehend. We'll break it down for progressives later on. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. It's Pam.
Pam, how are you today?
Oh, cold.
It's very cold outside. Absolutely.
It's going to get warmer. My husband's going ice fishing today, so he's
I
happy.
love it. I love it.
He went all weekend, so he was a happy guy.
Absolutely.
Didn't catch anything, but it was fun.
I've always wanted to go ice fishing. Never done that one yet. That is on the bucket list one day.
Well, it's tough in Kansas for the ice to get good enough.
Sure.
Just be extra careful.
Absolutely.
Oh, I just wanted to thank Gary. I agree with him most wholeheartedly. But we also have to remember that Bible says the women are to dress modestly.
See, and there it is. And look, like the comment before about, like Twin Peaks or Emerson Biggins and some of those. I totally get what they're doing, and I love the fact that they sponsor and that they work with the stations here because they know what works. And guys enjoy the attractions. It doesn't mean that they're out pursuing anything, but they're out enjoying the attractions, and that's why they're successful businesses. And I'm so glad they are. But you're right, when we look at the issue of the sexual harassment and the guys trying to take it too far and trying to push that envelope, like we mentioned before, it goes both ways. And if you're dressing to appease the eye because you know it attracts that, then you shouldn't be complaining when you see the results of that.
Yeah, I feel sorry for you guys trying to
It's a very difficult world, Pam. It really is.
I know it's tough out there.
It's a difficult world. And I mean, look, I don't have to worry about, going sightseeing any longer because, I get all the excitement that I need to already with the family. But, the guys that you're right. I mean, when they're out looking for something like that, if it's being offered like that, then, what do you expect to have from them? You can't say that, sorry, you're biologically to be attracted to that. Turn your face and you shouldn't be attracted to that anymore.
And I feel bad for, the guys. Well, what do I do? I can't imagine.
Well, because nowadays, even in the workplace, just by saying, hey, you look nice today. Did you do something to your hair? By that, now you're coming on to them and approaching them. Now you can have a sexual harassment case.
And then when I heard it's up to the woman to decide whether you have sexually harassed her or not, what kind of... Give me a break.
That's what it all is. Pam, I love it. I hate to cut you short, but we got to take a break running late on that. But you're absolutely right. That's the world that we live in today. I feel bad for the young generation, the high school kids, the teenage kids that are growing up trying to figure out who to date and the whole, dating thing and trying to appease and attract the opposite sex. I know they're going to have a difficult time, and I feel very, very bad for them all around. One more break, wrapping up the show today. This is The Voice of Reason.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Welcome back into the program, wrapping up the show. The show has gone by way too fast today, just having way too much fun. Tomorrow, we're going to get an update from one of our state legislators, State Representative Blake Carpenter, going to be joining the show, and we'll get an update from what they've been talking about this week in the legislative session, maybe get some ideas on the agricultural hemp bill, on his take on that, and if it's going to go anywhere, along with anything else that they've been discussing, debating, and dialoguing about at the statewide level. As always, we appreciate you checking it out, the show today, tuning in. As always, this is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. Let's have some common sense, reason, respect, and decency in the workplace today. This is The Voice of Reason. Have a great day, everybody.